Immigration to Canada. Today, Canada is known for its multicultural population and acceptance of all faiths and people from various nationalities. It is a beautiful country with starry skies, breathtaking waterfalls, picturesque lakes, mountains, and valleys, as well as gorgeous cities. It is hard to believe that around 100 years ago, discrimination played such a strong role in what is now a multicultural society. This video focuses on discrimination towards the South Asian population immigrating to Canada, in particular the Sikhs, throughout the 20th and beginning of the 21st century. South Asians are people who originate from southern Asia, mainly India. Sikhs are individuals who originate from the northern part of India and follow the teachings of the Sikh faith. And I will outline how this group of people gained the right to successfully become well-reputed politicians, RCMP officers, and accepted members of society. It all began in 1897 during Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee, when the first ever Sikhs came to Canada with the Hong Kong Army regiments to partake in the festivities in celebration of the Queen's Diamond Jubilee. Canada intrigued these Punjabi Sikh farmers who saw the potential in the land for farming and the possibility of a good life, and there was a large number of South Asian immigrants who came to Canada between the years 1904 throughout 1908. About 5,000 South Asians in total, mainly Sikh men, as women immigrating were a rarity at first, came to British Columbia and got jobs mainly as labor workers for very little pay. With increasing South Asian immigration, racial tensions began to escalate in 1907. This resulted in the anti-Asian riots of 1907, in which a group of about 700 people rioted through Vancouver's Asian district, targeting and vandalizing all South Asian, Chinese, and Japanese businesses. Despite such a negative event, the Sikhs formed the Khalsa Diwan Society later that same year, a religious governing body for the Sikhs in Canada which created and administered the Sikh temple which would be established in Vancouver in 1908. As South Asian immigration continued to rise, the Canadian government introduced the Continuous Journey Act on January 8, 1908, which would force all immigrants coming to Canada to travel directly from their native country, which in this case was India, to Canada without stopping. Although this was extremely difficult to do at the time, this regulation was brought into effect due to the fact that the only way to make such a long trip was by ship. This regulation was challenged by a group of 376 South Asian men in 1914, which consisted of 346, 24 Muslims, and 12 Hindus, who sailed from Hong Kong to Vancouver, making stops in Shanghai and Yokohama aboard a Japanese ship named the Kamagata Maru. Unfortunately, after 2 months of being anchored in Vancouver's docks, as appeals were being made to allow the individuals on the ship to disembark and settle in Canada, they were refused and forced to return back to Calcutta, where only previous residents of British Columbia being able to disembark. Upon their arrival in Calcutta, almost all of the passengers aboard the Kamagata Maru were either massacred or arrested by British troops in what is now known as the shooting at Budge Budge, although a few did manage to escape. Disheartened, many South Asians returned to India after the Kamagata Maru tragedy, and the Indian population dwindled to about 1,300 by 1920. In 1919, wives and children under 18 were finally permitted to join their husbands and fathers in Canada, although most anti-South Asian legislation, such as the Continuous Journey Act, remained law until 1947, after which it was still difficult to immigrate to Canada for South Asians despite a change in law until 1967. In 1945, all South Asians and Asians who had served in the Canadian Army finally gained the right to vote, which was soon after followed by all South Asian men being able to vote in provincial and federal elections beginning April 2, 1947. In 1967, immigration quotas were replaced with a point system, which evaluated potential immigrants based on their skills and other factors rather than ethnicity. after which South Asian immigration once again increased and continued to do so. On August 3, 2008, Canada's Prime Minister Stephen Harper apologized for the 1914 Kamagata Maru incident at an event held at Bear Creek Park in Surrey, BC, in commemoration of the men aboard the Kamagata Maru. Today, there is almost zero racism expressed against the South Asian community in Canada, although it does occasionally happen. Although there is a controversial charter known as the Values Charter, which may become a law in Quebec in the future, which would ban all religious symbols such as a turban and hijab from all government jobs. I guess we will just have to wait to find out what happens with this controversial charter. Other than that, South Asians continue to flourish in Canadian society and become well reputed among all Canadian citizens. Thank you for watching.